everyone. Welcome back. It's my quarantine diary number 2. I've been gone for a minute. I was planning to do these a little bit more frequently, but I just had some pretty dark days. So those are times when it's just not able to access a place where I feel good so well, especially enough to kind of put myself out there and be social and be a part of everything. So I will try to do them more frequently now, but it's been a little bit longer than I was hoping. But so one of the things that's been really painful for me about this quarantine is just having so much downtime that allows me to sort of get in my head, and some of the things that I just can normally escape, run away from in my day-to-day life because I'm so busy, some of those things sort of start bubbling to the surface for me. Like some of those painful realities that I'm usually able to just sort of keep locked away start to come up, especially when I have more time to be mindful, more downtime where I'm just sort of more in my head than usual. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about some experiences I've had in the past where that's come up. And a few years ago, I was doing a business mastermind, and we went to the first weekend where everyone sort of came into one place and worked on business stuff and mindset stuff and everything. And I walked into the training room, and up on the whiteboard it said, "What are you pretending not to know?" And I sort of felt like I was smacked upside the head by that. I was just kind of like run away, run away. It was blinding. But it really got me thinking, and I think that's something that's been a little bit tough about quarantine for me, is that some of those things that on a day-to-day basis I can just pretend not to know start coming up as truths for me that I don't want to face. And I think in the past for me, that's been something that's really caused me to find some really maladaptive places to escape, whether it was, drugs, alcohol, sex, food, whatever, ways to sort of artificially feel better so that I don't have to face some of those things. And yeah, we're all locked in our homes with our thoughts. Definitely. Yeah. And that's exactly why I wanted to come on here and talk about this, because I think it's probably a common experience. I do try and just sort of talk about my own experience because I don't want to put something on someone else, but I try to talk about experiences that I think other people might be going through, especially right now. We're all sort of in a common experience of being stuck in our homes. So a few years ago, a few years before that, it was, I was 22 when I went into treatment for an eating disorder. And if you came into the treatment center with any drugs or alcohol in your system, you were immediately assigned to going to AA a couple of times a week. And so for me, that was awesome because it's like the coffee was rationed at a treatment center, and so you go, you get extra coffee, and you get to leave the campus and stuff. So but we went to AA I think twice a week, and when I was there, I sort of started to realize how much of my problems were not specific to one substance or one behavior, but how it was really this bigger problem of really sort of being a very masterful escape artist. And so I would escape in those ways. And when I was sitting there, I sort of, at first I was like, maybe I'm an alcoholic. But then as I sort of unpacked some of that stuff mentally, I realized that it was really more of just, I'm like an escapeaholic, find ways to escape from reality. And I think that's something that a lot of us deal with. And I think, it's a similar thing, whether someone's, labeled and their problem is, alcoholism or addiction or an eating disorder or a million other different kinds of things. Those are really just diagnoses for the behaviors that are driving them behind that, which is needing to escape. And then the more you escape, the more secretive your addictions or behaviors come, the more ashamed you are, the more you need to escape. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really tough to get out of those places. It's not, on top of physical addiction, then you have this this need that sort of snowballs, because the more addicted you are, the more ashamed you are, the more secretive you are, the more alone you are, the lower your self-esteem goes eventually, where it's just this deep pit that you can't get out of. And then the hard thing about taking away those coping mechanisms, whether you go to treatment or whatever it is, or just try to jump into sobriety, is that then you have to face all those things, and that's really hard. And I think it's something that's especially difficult to do by yourself. So anyway, I wanted to sort of talk about that, and that's one of the things that I think is so difficult for me about this quarantine, is this lack of distraction, which equates to like an awareness of the pain that's underneath that I've been distracting from and other people have been distracting from. And so when that's the case and all of those things are taken away, the things that make us so busy, it's like you're sort of sitting with what you're pretending not to know. If you're even able to access it in the first place, which unfortunately I am. Well, maybe fortunately. Because awareness is really the first step to coming out of these painful places, having these painful realities. Once you're able to start facing them, you can start dealing with them. And it's not until, there's a reason that the first step is in AA and some of these other, correctly accept this reality and acknowledge awareness of this reality, you can't start working on it. And that's something that's really painful to do. And we'll all go kicking and screaming, being forced to do it. And so I think that's something that's really tough for me. And maybe that says something about some of the, the painful things I'm not facing, but I know I'm not alone. So I'm not ashamed of it. I know we all shared that. I mean, I would be shocked if there was anyone who didn't have some painful area of their life that they weren't facing, whether it's neglecting a relationship because it's damaged and feels irreparable, family relationships, or whether it's feeling, dead in your job and feeling, like you're not doing something that you're passionate about, a million different things where we can feel pain. I would be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't have something that they're pretending not to know when they're able to distract. So then the second step after awareness is just finding effective, healthy coping skills. Because you can't always sit with that stuff. Once you acknowledge it and you admit you're aware of it, then you have to find a way to replace those maladaptive coping mechanisms with healthy coping skills. Because once you admit you have a problem, ideally you're stripped away of those coping skills, whether it's something serious like alcoholism, addiction, or it's something simple like just sort of pretending it isn't there and faking happiness and doing other things physically in your day-to-day to escape it. We Are Waking Up says you're definitely not alone. Well, thank you. I'm glad, because that means this may be helpful to someone else out there. So some of my more adaptive coping skills that I've had to find for myself are like reading fiction. I found that until I got cancer a couple years ago, I never read any fiction at all. I only read nonfiction. And I was like, this is sort of what I identify with. I don't identify with fiction. If I was gonna, I don't really need a story. Like, that's not what I'm reading for. But for me, when I was going through that experience, fiction was a really nice escape. So I think that can be a healthy escape, is, stories, reading fiction, following, a TV show, something that just gives you that respite from being in that space in your brain. Because it can be a really painful place to be and you don't want to be there all the time. Then another thing is just like spending time with people who make me feel good, participating in activities that cause me to be mindful, to give my full attention to what I'm doing. And one of the things I really sort of reach for in my brain and in my experience is that when I'm really stuck in a dark place that I need to get out of, I use a skill that I call participate. And it just reminds me to go do something that takes my attention and participate with other people. So whether it's going and participating with my son and finding an activity to do, or something that causes my attention to be focused on that thing. So I think when we're mindful of what we're pretending not to know, even though it's a painful and difficult process, it's really the only way to rid yourself of the pain, is to be aware of it, to acknowledge it, and to find healthy ways to cope with it. And then eventually you'll be able to work through it if you're in that process. But until you're finding healthy ways to cope instead of ways to avoid, that process can't start. And one thing that I've found to be really true through my life is that the only way out is through. So that's something that I've used to help me put one foot in front of the other in painful experiences, whether it was like, I think I did 16 rounds of chemo over 5 months, and it was just one foot in front of the other. And I was like, okay, like, this is my job. My job is my survival. It's my only job is to survive. And the only way out is through. And this is my process. And even though it fucking sucks, and even though I don't want to go through it, as soon as I start putting one foot in front of the other and gain momentum and just sort of resign and radically accept that reality, that painful thing, I was able to sort of build some momentum. And even though it was really hard, it was an acknowledgement that, okay, I'm getting through this because I can't avoid it. I can't escape it. The only way out is through. I think it's Winston Churchill who said, if you're going through hell, keep going. So I hope you guys are surviving quarantine. I hope this is something a little helpful for you, either to have some ideas of how to support yourself in going through that, or just to know that you're really not alone. One thing I've learned when, connecting with people in a vulnerable place is that everybody has this shit and everybody deals with this shit. And I think we're, in this time, in our generation, my generation, I think we're starting to sort of come out with this stuff as saying, like, this is normal. Some of the Me Too stuff, like acknowledging how many people are raped and how this is a common experience that you don't have to be ashamed of. Like, all those kinds of things I feel like are really coming more to the forefront. Some of the things that had shame around them, whether it's in our parents' generation, are sort of being brought to the light as common human experiences. So I think that's a really good thing. And that's one of the things that sort of has allowed me to take this vulnerable space, is to say, I've seen other people do it, and I know I'm not alone. And hey, I want to contribute to that conversation where other people don't feel alone either. And I want to be someone who is upfront with my vulnerable, awful shit, so that I create a space for other people to be vulnerable around me. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful for you. Go ahead and like it. Subscribe if you want to be aware of when more of these videos are coming out. I appreciate all of you. I hope you have an amazing day and are manifesting all the things you want in your life. All right.